Picture this. With Champions Meet coming this August 17th, you are panicking with what little knowledge and time you have left, trying to build your first competitive endgame Uma team. The thing is, most meta-defining teams have so many different combinations, with each Uma requiring the right sparks and skills from both the parents and grandparents. Fronts getting the Maru and Taiki ultimates, and back getting the Maru and 3-star Ryan ultimates, hunting for tail held high as well as playtime is over, all while you're barely even getting a single 9-star power or stamina spark on your 100th career run. What if I told you there was an Uma that needs none of that? 0 Kira-san Black, 0 God tier parents, and 7 different debuffs to end your enemy Uma's entire career. Hey guys, UmaPokke here. With almost 30 career runs testing on Nice Nature, we are going to be taking a look at the most evil debuff Uma guide to build up your very own your very own debuffer for this upcoming Champions Meet. For I'm going to be focusing a little bit more for Nice Nature herself, but specifically to Nice Nature, she's somewhat moody in her runs because she's forever third place, just like her real life counterpart, which is why almost all of her career goals, she's always top 3 instead of the usual top 5, and bro is literally happier if she gets third instead of second, and if you get third in a non-target G1 race, you can get even more SP than winning that said G1 race. Lore drop aside, I would say for debuff Umas, their use case and therefore the way you play their careers are extremely different from the traditional Umas, almost a way of cheesing the normal racers, like using the Inting Scion in League of Legends or the Tricycle Trio in Honkai Star Rail. The debuff Umas themselves, they don't aim to win, but they make your enemies lose with less speed or less stamina, so that your very own ace Umas can actually win the upcoming Champions Meet. To build a proper debuff Uma, you first need to know what is the debuff you want to apply, and there are currently 2 main types. Stamina debuffs with the keyword subdued and flustered, the icon that looks like a fart, and the speed debuffs with the keyword hesitant, which is the icon that has the Uma sweating. Now, because we only have limited skill points in URA Finale, around 2000 in some of the non-target G1s, it is pretty much impossible to run every single speed and stamina debuffs into a single debuff Uma, so unfortunately, we would have to choose. There are currently speed, acceleration, rush, stamina, and vision debuffs. The biggest misconception when building debuff Umas is to slam as many debuffs as possible, since they are not going to win the race anyways, so you might as well try to get every single debuff. Unfortunately, just like in real life, if your bow is only so big, it's impossible to fit in every single foot within a debuff buffet. On top of having enough skill points to unlock them, deck building also revolves around getting set debuffs, and a deck that can constitute every single debuff in the game most of the time is going to be performing very badly, especially if you cannot hit the stat checks required during the career, ending the run prematurely. Currently, the most useful debuffs are either the stamina debuffs or the speed debuffs, and the most notable debuff Umas are Nice Nature for stamina and Agnes, Rudolph, or Grass Runner for speed. So for stamina debuffs, they aim to completely kill your enemy Umas by depleting their stamina and failing the stamina check towards the end of the race, but it is a very all-in debuff. If the opponent did not account for the stamina debuffs, their run is pretty much over, assuming that your own ace Uma has enough stamina to manage. All white stamina debuffs are at -0.01, and all gold stamina debuffs are at -0.03. So the current best stamina debuffer is going to be Nice Nature, with a built-in double gold of Mystifying Murmur as well as All Seeing Eyes for a grand total of -0.06 stamina debuff. For context, 1 gold stamina skill is 0.055 stamina recovery, and 1 white stamina skill is going to be 0.015 stamina recovery. So this means that from Nice Nature's base kit and 1 more flustered or subdued debuff, you are able to completely remove 1 gold and 1 white skill of stamina recovery for every single enemy Uma. If their stamina checks revolve around proccing their stamina skills, then Nice Nature will literally wipe them out in a single second. An example can be seen from this clip over here, where my evil nature procced All Seeing Eyes at a late race against all 3 enemy Umas, which results in them not being able to maintain their speed, allowing my 2 ace Umas of B1 and Super Kree to rush up to the final burst and claim rank 1 and rank 2. While this may seem absolutely diabolical, keep in mind that if the enemy accounted for evil nature's drain and prepared additional stamina to account for it, then stamina debuffs are basically useless because you did not manage to drain the opponent's stamina enough before the race ends. Hence, stamina debuffs are a very all or nothing debuff. They either work and they basically completely destroy the enemy Umas, or they just don't work at all. On the other hand, speed debuff assumes that your enemy will not run out of stamina, so So instead, they will aim to hinder their actual speed performance despite passing the stamina check, allowing for your own Umas to outspeed and claim first place. All white speed debuffs are at the minus 0.15 and gold speed debuffs at the minus 0.25. The current best speed debuffer now is going to be Agnes, Grass Wanderer, as well as Simply Rudolph with built-in Dominator, which is a minus 0.25 speed for 3 seconds. For context, one gold speed is 0.35 speed, while one white speed is going to be 0.15 for single circle and 0.25 for double circle. Now, unlike stamina debuffs, there isn't a hard stat check to hit for speed debuffs, because whatever the value is going to be, it will be the corresponding effect on the enemy Umas, then your own Umas will compete at that set advantage. Note that for speed debuffs, you could consider building a semi-debuff / sub DPS sub ace Uma, but the stat requirements are very high, being 1200, 800, 800 for speed, stamina, and power, medium S, as well as at least 1 gold recovery on top of the debuff skills built into their kit. So for players that have the capacity to build this, then their performance will be extremely strong, because not only can they compete in terms of power, they can also allow your own ace to perform at an even higher caliber. For all of the other debuffs, they're not going to be that impactful compared to stamina and speed, because acceleration debuffs only proc in the early races of now, rush debuff only procs if the enemy actually gets rushed in the first place, which means the effectiveness is a lot less consistent, and vision debuffs, well, they reduce your enemy's vision, so really nothing too crazy. On top of their effects being less impactful than speed and stamina, deck building with these debuffs are also not ideal compared to the wit and stamina deck archetype, which can allow for more skill points and base stats to at least finish your URA career. Now, between the speed and stamina debuffs, it basically comes down to this. Stamina debuffs, like I mentioned, they are extremely powerful if they actually work, notably against the new players who have a weaker stamina Uma that cannot get through your stamina checks. Basically, 90% of the player base as of this moment pretty much would probably fail the stamina checks, because most of them are probably using their 400 stamina Umas in a medium race, praying for the double gold stamina skill to pull them through, assuming that passing URA is gonna be the same as passing Champions Meet. Hey guys, future UmaPokke here. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't even make this video, because those that watch this will probably actually build a decent stamina Uma for CM now. So yeah, please like and subscribe, as UmaPokke is making the competition a lot harder. On the other hand, speed debuffs will be more effective against players who know what they are doing, hitting the stamina checks and competing speed for speed with your own Uma. In this scenario, assuming that they are still running a triple ace deck or a double ace 1 debuff Uma, but they are using a stamina debuff Uma for themselves, you can actually pivot into your own single or double speed debuff Uma, allowing your 1 ace to win CM, assuming that the double speed debuff will reduce the enemy's ace Umas. I can foresee Chemi from the semis and final section, where most players who made it through the very first match would have passed the stamina check filter by evil nature. So this is where bringing speed debuff Umas will be extremely strong, because I doubt there are that many trainers, at least before I made this video, that can even pass the stamina check. So the last thing I expect is for a speed debuff Uma to reduce their final speed. So picture this scenario. In the very first match of Champions meeting, you use your stamina debuff Uma to filter out all of the casuals who are using the 3 favorite Umas. Maybe they bring their own stamina debuff Uma to try and filter you as well, but you have prepared for it, bringing you to the semis. For both the semis as well as finals, your opponents will have likely experienced the surge of evil natures from the first match, so they have prepped up more than enough stamina in the next 2 matches. Now this is where it pivot into either Grass Wanderer, Agnes Taigion, or Simply Rudolph for Dominator and the additional speed debuffs, allowing your ace to have a higher speed ceiling and thereby increasing the likelihood of winning the race. Of course, if you're up against players who know what they're doing, it will ultimately be a knowledge check in your Uma skills, stats, deck, as well as inheritance. So at this point, who should even build debuff Umas in the first place? Theoretically speaking, in the best case scenario, an opponent with 3 aces or with excellent stats will stand to gain the highest chance to win a Champions Meet. They have prepped enough stamina for stamina debuffs, and their skill and stat inheritance simply outperforms your own Umas. However, this is unlikely the case for the majority of the players. It is already hard enough to get a single good parent with the right white sparks and skills inherited from your grandparents, let alone duplicating this for 3 different aces. For example, Goldship wants Major, Ryan, 3-star, and Maruzensky. Ogre wants Taiki Shadow and Maruzensky, and Maruzensky herself wants ideally a Pace Chaser Maruzensky with Taiki Shadow and Ogre. All of them ideally wanting enough power sparks to slam all in speed and stamina for the best possible stats and getting Tail Hell High, Slipstream, Playtime, Professor of Curvature, Swinging Ratio, you name it, you call it. I feel that as of this Champions Meet, almost every single player should consider getting up at least 1 debuff Uma, potentially even 2 debuff Umas. Not only are they much easier to race, their strength is also the best utilized in the early game right now, when majority of the Torenas do not have enough stats for their Umas. In fact, stamina debuff Umas eventually gets phased out after a few months or years, since everyone by then would have prepped enough stamina to to account for stamina debuffs. Additionally, if it already takes so much effort to raise 2 or even 1 proper Uma for Champions Meet, imagine you trying to raise a 3rd ace Uma. They are pretty much almost never going to perform or at least be on par with your strongest and 2nd strongest Uma. Since all it takes for Champions Meet is for 1 Uma to win, your 3rd Uma is basically useless if their quality is simply not strong enough to compete with your other 2. It's like running 3 different DPS, but each DPS being weaker than the last against someone that runs 2 or even 1 good DPS, then brings their 1 or 2 debuffers to make the enemy Umas weaker than theirs. For Nice Nature, Potential Fire is non-negotiable to guarantee the minus 0.06, star level does not matter, and she's pretty much the easiest to build. For Grass Runner and Agnes Taikion, 3 star is highly recommended for a sub DPS build and minimum potential 3 for Dominator. For Simply Rudolph, also minimum potential 3, maybe potential 5 if you do not have Kira-san Black or you want some additional discounts on the Professor of Curvature. So at this point, how exactly do you build a debuff Uma? For this segment, I'm only gonna be focusing on Nice Nature because I do not own a Simply Rudolph and my Grass and Agnes is still potential 1 because Evil Nature basically took all my monies away. Alright, I'm completely broke, but the concept is pretty much gonna be somewhat similar, and this is one of my favorite reasons for building a debuff Uma because their requirement is so much lower compared to your normal Umas. For inheritance, it doesn't really matter what they are because their uniques would not be used at all. Ideally, get a double circle and either all-in speed, stamina, or power to aim for the final stat line of 600, 500, 600, whatever card is gonna be, and closer to 1000 wit will do. If your inheritance Umas somehow also has a debuffs built in, so for example, if you are using a Nice Nature but you somehow manage to get a Parents for Grass Wonder Rudolph of Agnes, then even better because you get a little bit more discounts or more hints for debuffs, but that's not going to be necessary. In an ideal world, aside from wits, power will be the 2nd most valuable stat because it affects your acceleration, which allows for your debuff Uma to try and get in range with the other Umas. In Nice Nature's case, for all-seeing eyes because that is directly dependent on her own vision. This speed and stamina is going to be a rough requirement for clearing Nice Nature's career run, and if your stamina is going to be too low, there's a very good chance that she will fail by Arima Keenan. For the deck that I'm personally using, is going to be as this over here. Now please ignore my unmaxed IOE because, you know, like I mentioned, I'm a complete brokey. 0 SSRs would be required for this deck itself. Now Rice Shower is going to be the best candidate to borrow from a whale. You need at least 1 stamina card to hit 500 stamina comfortably while having very nice debuffs within Rice Shower, namely Subdued and Fluster Pace Chasers, which will be excellent against Pace Ogre and Maruzenskis. For the 3 different wit cards, they are going to be our baseline to get into more than 800 wit territory to proc our multiple debuffs more consistently, which each of them also offering debuffs to Nice Nature. Sunday gives us a double speed debuff with very strong passives. Agnes gives Tether as well as Late Surger Savvy, which directly buffs your debuffs, notably All-Seeing Eyes because this skill gives 60 wit as well as 10 Field of Vision, and Field of Vision is directly linked with your All-Seeing Eyes. She also gives additional energy recovery passive to reduce your rest time. Keep in mind, for the free event special week as well as Major Double SR wit card, they can also give Late Savvy if you have them invested. Simply Rudolph R card is gonna be the most amount of stamina debuffs, which improves our potency even further, but the unfortunate thing is she has no hint bonus built in, and sometimes the run just refuses to give you the right skills like Pace Chaser Savvy, Groundwork, and Preferred Position. Very high risk, very high reward for a R card over here. For 1 speed card, this is gonna be Swift Tosho because you do want to hit around the 550 to 600 speed benchmark, giving us Trick, Murmur, as well as a Lone Wolf. The first 2 are general stamina debuffs, and Murmur is gonna be a cost discount. Lone Wolf is made to prevent your enemy Umas from making use of Lone Wolf, which would be a 40 speed buff. It is not for Nice Nature herself, but more so to prevent the enemy Umas from using Lone Wolf. You can consider running Kira-san Black for more base speed and power if you find yourselves not caring for Lone Wolf or Trick, or if you're struggling to hit the speed and power stat lines. Your very last card is going to be a flex. You can consider the R or SR card Air Groove for end closers, which would be extremely common with the influx of gold ships, but most gold ships should have very high stamina in the first place, so consider focusing on the speed debuff. The IOE Friendship card is what I use personally for comfort, the front runners for front Marus, as well as getting the hesitant end closers for gold ships. Lastly, Satono Diamond for front runner and Tether can also work here as well. With Rice Shower, this greatly reduces the stamina pressure for the run, but the actual debuffs are less important since most front runners are weaker than the pace, late, and end Umas this Champions Meet. For the actual run itself, here are some notable key points to consider. The run is extremely different from a traditional run because your base stats will be considerably lower. Usually by Classic Summer, your stats are likely 100 lower than a normal run, so your stamina and speed is going to be extremely important here to hit your checkpoints, at least for the first Kikuka as well as Arima race checks, especially your stamina. By the end, you want to ideally have 550 and 500 in speed and stamina as the bare minimum. So you can take a look over here. That is going to be the stat line for my first place in Kiku and third place in Arima respectively. Your objective for this entire run is to click on as many red hints as possible in this following order of importance: Rudolph, Right Shower, Sunday, Sweep Tosho. Agnes hints doesn't give us any useful skills except for Tether, so you could pretty much just ignore her. Outside of the raid hints, aim to raise Aoi's friendship to level 3 as soon as possible to unlock her rare creation. Then use it whenever you need to rest, since it's guaranteed energy, mood, and a ton of skill points. If you're not going to be using Aoi, stick to spamming wit over stamina. If your inheritors are not speed and power like the ones that I have used, then focus on the lacking stat instead. Friendship wit training will be a very strong contender for energy regeneration by senior year, so you actually don't really need to rest that much in this race unless you have no G1s and no G2s, no rainbows, and no hints. Speaking of races, try to get at least 18 to 20 race total for your skill points. You might need a little bit more if you're not going to be using the Aoi friendship card. G1 is going to be having more skill points than G2, and remember that getting third place with nice nature in non-target G1s actually gives you even more skill points than getting first place. So winning actually does not matter because it's mainly for your skill points. The debuff Uma career is going to be highly unstable because it is basically based on your hint procs, and the cards like Rudolph and Right Shower, they have multiple options in their hints. You can try this technique called hint sniping, where you learn a skill immediately so the future hints will guarantee to give a different skill. But I will only do this for skills that actually won instead of non-debuff skills because skill point is extremely tight. Lastly, be prepared to fail all of your runs because it's going to be completely fine. The run itself for a debuff Uma is highly based on what hints you proc and do you hit a very strict stamina checks using these R and SR cards. Even if you succeed in your run, not getting crucial skills like the stamina debuff from Rudolph as well as the late Surger Savvy from Agnes is also not ideal, and you probably have to try again. If you absolutely have to, you can consider borrowing a whale debuffer Uma like Agnes, Grass Wonder, or Rudolph for some possible free debuff hints as well as a nicer base stat line. With that, all the best in building your most evil nature. Let me know how it goes in the comments below, and I'll be looking forward to see all of the eyes staring at my Umas this upcoming Champions Meet. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Remember to drop a like. I'm not sure when this is going up, and all the best in your gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.